The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat. The Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, joined by our Carhartt master, Doug Van Gelder. He's wearing the Carhartt shirt with the pockets, and he looks motivated because we have a fantastic show with a fantastic guest for the entire hour. I believe you remember him coming to Holmes Junior High and speaking to the team. I think you were there for that.
I don't think I was.
Okay, well,
that was when Seth was in charge.
Okay, I thought you stopped by. For it.
I must have been preoccupied.
And maybe we'll have him tell the story. It was the story of the toughest kid on the block. And that guy is 1984 Olympic wrestling champion, two-time NCAA wrestling champion from the University of Iowa, Randy Lewis, who happens to be celebrating his 58th birthday today. Happy birthday, Randy.
Well, thank you very much, Kyle.
Hey, and I think we want to know, when's your next wrestling comeback?
I think we're done with those.
Really?
Yeah, you just finished up last night, didn't you?
I mean, it sounds like you could do it if you wanted to. You were, 50 when you made the comeback in 2009?
I was 3 weeks short, 3 weeks before my 50th birthday.
Okay. But when you look at that, you won 2 matches. That's pretty impressive now that you look back at it. You'd been retired since 92 and you come back in 2009. You got to be pretty pleased you picked up 2 wins.
Well, it was fun. It was fun. I needed to get back on the mat to convince myself that I needed to retire or stay retired.
Yeah. So you're going to stay retired, but it is your 58th birthday, and you've taken a new profession. You are now a realtor in Iowa City. You enjoying that?
Yep, working with Lepic Kroger Realtor, and got one property that I got listed and then sold the next day, and that was condo that Jim Heffernan owned with his daughter going to Iowa.
All right.
He just graduated.
So it's been fun so far to be in a different profession?
Yes, it has.
Okay. What made you decide to go that route? Was it something that appealed to you about that? I know Lepic is a huge wrestling supporter, so it seems like an ideal fit. Yeah,
well, my dad was in real estate, and I've done a lot of different things. I've owned some different businesses. I've owned video stores. I've owned an Anytime Fitness Center for 4 years. Owned a Culver's restaurant in Newton, Iowa for 3 years. So I've pretty much, and I've coached and wrestled a lot. So I've done a lot of different things, and I was just, I sold my business about 1.5 years ago and needed to find something to do to make some money and make a living, and I thought that I looked at a lot of different things, looked at buying some different businesses, and I just finally decided to get into real estate, and I've had my license now about 2 months.
But it feels good to me to have you back in the state of Iowa, especially Iowa City, and I hope that's the right fit for you because that's your passion is wrestling, and you get to be in Iowa City. Have you found that it's been the right fit being back in the state of Iowa and knowing that you have the wrestling base and the wrestling following to be around?
Well, yeah, and my daughter just graduated from high school at West High, so it was good to be back around her again, and so that was the big reason why I moved back to Iowa City after I sold my business in Rapid City. So it's nice to be back in Iowa City and back in Iowa with a lot of wrestling going on.
We are on the mat with Randy Lewis, 1984 Olympic champion, celebrating his 58th birthday. On the show today, we have the World Team Trials coming up this weekend, and this is a fun event because you get to see elite wrestling in virtually every single round, and it's going to be headlined hopefully by Jordan Burroughs against Kyle Dake. That matchup has a lot of potential hopefully for the next few years. When you look at that potential matchup, how do you see that best of 3 playing out if it happens that way, if Kyle Dake makes it through the mini tournament?
Well, I think I'm pretty sure he's going to make it through the mini tournament, but he might not. But I thought that Kyle Dake would beat Burroughs at Las Vegas. I don't think I think he let he did not wrestle near as aggressively enough as you need to do to beat the world champion. And I was kind of disappointed in that match. I expected to see a great match, and I saw a match where I did not like Kyle Dake taking that 3-point stance, and just it looked like he stalled a lot, and Burroughs couldn't get anything going. I need to see matches with more action.
And how do you get to that point with a match like that? Because they're going to play the cat and mouse game. How do you get that match like that to open up so there is scoring, like there was a few years ago when it went into overtime and it was a fantastic match for the fans? How do we get to that point?
Well, I think the 4 matches they've had in the past have all been, there's only been one really good match, and Kyle, this is the first time that they wrestled under equal. The national finals is the first time they wrestled under what I would consider fair circumstances. The other 4 matches they've had were all after Kyle Dake had wrestled 3 or 4 matches, real tough matches against other national champs, and had to go through like David Taylor and Andrew Howe and the Paulson brothers maybe even, and sit there with Jordan Burroughs on top. And the first time they wrestled then in that, I think Burroughs, and this one 7 points was attacked Kyle Dake pretty fast in the first match, and then they had a real good match. The second match, it was like 6-6 and went into overtime. And then another time they wrestled when Kyle Dake went through the grinder again with Burroughs on top, and I felt like Kyle Dake was ahead 2-1. It was going to be a really good match. And then what should have been a 1-point move, in my opinion, was a 4-point move for Jordan Burroughs, and that just the match was over pretty much right then. And then I felt like Burroughs jumped the gun and Tech called him real fast. Got 8 points in about the first 5 seconds, and we haven't got to see the great matchup. We've got to see just one real good match between them, and I don't really consider it a good match that they had in Vegas. It was very little wrestling. They're both very athletic, and I want to see them getting a 10-8 match or something like that. I want to see them attack each other and go out and score points. And
well, Randy, you mentioned fair circumstances, and for those who don't know, the World Team Trials is set up that there's a mini tournament, and then there's someone on the top of the ladder waiting, and then there'll be a best 2 out of 3. Is that a fair system?
Well, you know what? It is. When you have a chance to wrestle at the National Open and win the national title, you deserve to be on top. I'd like to see him go that 2 out of 3 the next day. I think you deserve something by being on top. But everybody had a chance to wrestle in the National Open. But to take somebody from a year ago and keep them on top, I don't think is the right way to do it, because there's a lot of guys that every year there's somebody new in national. They should have to go through the same grind. I don't like it. It protects our guys that don't need protection.
We are on the mat.
They should be able to win the Nationals, get in there. But it is what it is, and I don't have. But I thought that was Kyle Dake's first shot where he's gone in under equal circumstances. And not saying it's not fair, but under equal circumstances. It's like imagine being Jordan Burroughs, the 3-time world champion, Olympic champion, 4-time world and Olympic champion. Now, he's a pretty hard guy to give that big of a lead on and beat. They have to wrestle 3 or 4 matches earlier in the day against top-notch competition, and then have to wrestle Jordan Burroughs 2 out of 3. That's like having to run the 100 meters against Usain Bolt when you have to run 3 heats earlier in the day and he doesn't run any.
Right.
That's hard to do. And Kyle Dake came out of college and had Jordan Burroughs already sitting on top of the ladder, so he never ever one time had a chance to wrestle him when they were equally fresh until this year. And then Jordan Burroughs won the match. It's very controversial. And I tell you what, the people at UWW, United World Wrestling, have. I thought they tried to fix the sport and were getting some good rules, and it's just like they can't help but shoot them. Wrestling people can't help but shoot themselves in the foot. the new rules that they put in, and I don't know, like a caution in 2, and Rutherford gets 2-point caution for continually shoving who was it? Jordan Oliver in the head, and then Burroughs certainly hit Kyle Dake plenty of times in the head. And I don't know if that is supposed to be a stalling. I don't know how they decide what's a caution in 2. I mean, they keep screwing up the rules, and now they and then correct throw. I saw some guys throw really bad throws, go flat to their back. Should have been 4 against them, and they gave them 2 for correct throws. So I'm not happy with what UWW, and which used to be FILA. It's like every year they make rules that hurt the sport worse and more confusing and give more power to the ref. And I watched that match with Dake and Burroughs, and I'm like, I have no idea who should have won this match. Dake had this very similar match the match before with Derringer that I felt like if Derringer would have been Jordan Burroughs, he would have won the match. They would have given him the calls in that match. So I'm watching a match. I've been around the sport for 40 years at the senior level, and I'm watching these matches. I don't know how they're supposed to be. I can't tell. And you think, oh, the ref really blew that. I go, well, I don't know if they blew it or if that's just how stupid the rules are. Well, I think a lot of those calls are actually the correct calls according to the interpretation that they're told they're supposed to call.
Okay, but Randy, this brings up a great point, is why has international wrestling gotten so corrupt? And I think it's gotten better, but there was a phase where it was so corrupt that you didn't even know how to fix it until we dropped the sport in 2013. Why does this happen in wrestling?
Well, part of it was all of a sudden the Russians are getting paid $1 million to win the Olympics, or $500,000 to win the Worlds, and nobody else is getting paid anything. Now the Americans, and I don't believe any American's ever been bribed to sign. So you got a lot of these other countries. So you got a Russian who's got $1 million on the line, and it's just like this, Kyle. If you and I ran a 40-yard dash tomorrow, and I'm slower than heck, but if I win, I get $1 million, and if you win, nobody gets a nickel. We're going to work it out probably that you're going to trip and fall, and I'm going to win the 40-yard dash against you, and we split that $1 million. And that's what's happened when the Russians get somebody like you have them paying off officials. The first year they did that, I believe there were 7 weight classes in freestyle. The Russians won 6 gold, and this is when they had the rules where you got supposedly a ball grab, and I don't know if this was or a coin flip. And the Russians, I was told that they won 27 out of 30 coin flips, which is the chances of that are less than 1 in 5 million. It's there's been a lot of corruption in it, even with no money in it, and the communist countries back in the day were very powerful. The Russian bloc always had. I wrestled over in Tbilisi some matches, and it was. You got screwed pretty bad by the system. That's just part of the game, but and it still was. And you had Russians throwing matches after they already won the gold. If they beat the American, like Andre Metzger, who just went into the Hall of Fame in 1979, he got a bronze medal instead of a silver because he lost to Human, who's a 5-time World Olympic champion, and he had beat the Bulgarian in the round robin, and then Human threw the match against the Bulgarian so that the Bulgarian would get the silver. Human could lose the match and still get the gold. So there's always been corruption in it, and we've tried to root it out. But now with some of these calls they're given, I feel like they keep giving the referees total decision as to who wins the match, like who's put on the 30-second clock, who gets the caution in 2. And I felt like they really finally made some really good rule changes, and matches were getting high scoring. And now, a caution in 2 should not be more than a takedown. And I don't know. I'm upset with the way they break things that aren't. They try and fix things that aren't broken, and that breaks them worse.
We are on the map.
Something's working. Something works for them. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just saying we're on the mat with Randy Lewis, 1984 Olympic wrestling champion. He is celebrating his 58th birthday today. We're talking about international wrestling, and just want to spend just about a minute here on Kyle Dake. You have said that his record of getting 4 NCAA championships at 4 different weight classes is the most impressive wrestling record you've ever seen. Why do you feel that that was so impressive, and why do you think that's unbreakable?
Well, I don't know if it's the most impressive thing I've seen, but I would say that it's going to be very, very hard to beat. Okay, it is very impressive, and I think the next thing that can happen is Cale Sanderson's I think is he still the only one to be 4-time undefeated and 159-0 or 100. I think that's what it is. Might be 156. I'm not sure.
159. Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be hard to beat 159 or I don't think anybody's getting 40 matches anymore. But where somebody may beat that is for somebody to come in and go undefeated without redshirting, go 4 straight years without redshirting, and that's the next thing. That's the next big record. Now, what's impressive about Kyle Dake winning at 4 different weights, I've looked back and looked at a lot of things, and I don't think anybody else has ever even wrestled in the NCAAs at 4 different weights. Very few guys have wrestled in the NCAAs and have All-American or won. I don't think anybody's even won the NCAAs at 3 different weights. I think
you're right.
And Kyle has won it at 4 different weights. I don't think any of the 3-timers have won it at I know, like, Mark Chiarella won it twice at 150 and then moved up to 167 his senior year. I know guys have won it 2 weight classes apart, but I don't think anybody else has ever even wrestled in the NCAAs in 4 different weights. So that's something that right there is hard to do. And Kyle Dake won it at 4 different weights, and he won it without redshirting. And he was 18 years old as a true freshman. And I think his birthday is before March, so he might have been 19. But he was a young kid that won it as a true freshman without taking a gray shirt in high school, like some of the guys do. Some of the guys that are older coming in there. I mean, there's some guys like look at Mark Hall's a true freshman, but he's 20 years old already.
Yeah.
Nothing against him, and by the way, he's a great wrestler, and I'm real excited. I cannot tell you how many these guys right now are so ready, but I want to see someone come in and try and come in and say, hey, I want to come in and do something that's never done before, and that's win the NCAAs undefeated for 4 years. That's the next big thing to go after, without redshirt.
We got to take our first break. We're going to have more with 1984 Olympic wrestling champion Randy Lewis, who is celebrating his 58th birthday today. We'll be back on the mat.
When all you want is sports, all you need is 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Doug Van Gelder. Our guest today, 1984 Olympic wrestling champion Randy Lewis, also won 2 NCAA wrestling championships at the University of Iowa. And he's also celebrating his 58th birthday today. Randy, you've wrestled a lot of the greats, and I just want to go through a few of those. You didn't wrestle him in competition, but you wrestled him in practice. Dan Gable, Jay Robinson had said that when you wrestle Dan Gable in practice, it's indescribable. You cannot describe what it's like to have Dan Gable in a practice room match. You have wrestled him on numerous occasions. What's that experience like wrestling Dan Gable behind closed doors in a practice?
Well, I wrote an article telling the story about it, but if you haven't read that, it's indescribable, but he gets on, when you wrestle him in a practice room, he doesn't let you go, and he gets on top, crank on one arm, and all of a sudden you get up, and it's like he cranks on one arm, and all of a sudden you get up and you can't use your right arm. You feel like then he gets on top of you again, and he cranks on your left shoulder, and all of a sudden you have no arms, and he just wears you down so much. He attacks one part of your body, and until that no longer works, and then he attacks another part, and then he gets on, and he's the best practice wrestler to remember, and was one of the greatest ever. And I mean, the longer you go, the better he does. And when he won, they were 9-minute matches. Nobody could go 9 minutes with him. And he was, by the way, nobody scored a point on him in the Olympics, so it's not like he was bad the first minute, because he gets the first takedown. I remember one time I bet him a Mountain Dew that I could get one takedown on him. We went the whole practice, and I said, but you can't ride me. You can't stay on top. We got to go. Every time we get a takedown, we got to go up. So we went like 50 takedowns, and I think he got 50. I know I got 0. And I had to buy him a Mountain Dew at the end of practice. But when he's the best. Him and Dave Schultz are the two best guys I've ever seen at wrestling bigger guys. Now, I was not a bigger guy. I was not as big as Gable, but I watched him just wrestle Chris Campbell and Ed Bannock and Lou Bannock and be able to go real good and give those guys all they want. And Dave Schultz was real good at wrestling bigger guys like that, too.
All right.
Gable, he's just, it's indescribable how good he is in the room.
How about John Smith, who you wrestled in 4 matches, 6-time world and Olympic champion? You look at him, he's slender, he doesn't have a lot of muscle definition, but he put on a show, and he had so much ability to score points in droves. He was really the perfect style for you when you wanted someone to shoot in on you. He was the guy to do that. What's it like wrestling John Smith live in competition?
Well, it was fun, and I remember the first match I wrestled him, I lost 10, and I think that was the best match we had. But we both got better as the match went on, and I could feel him making adjustments and me making adjustments. And in our 3.5 matches that we had, we both kept getting better. He kept getting better at finishing. And it was the first match we had, he won 10-8, and I felt like I feel like, wow, that's as good as I can wrestle, and I lost. And then the next match we wrestled, I beat him 7-5, and then I felt like I gave a match away in the first match of the Olympic trials. I was ahead 2-0 at the end of the first period, and gave up 5 points in about 10 seconds on a great 3-point move that he hit, and then I made a really stupid tried to reverse into his back and went to my back for 2. But I felt like he was so good in every position, and I was one of the best counter wrestlers in the world. So you had the best guy at finish and the best counter wrestler wrestling each other. And it was a lot of fun. And I know before I got hurt in that 4th match, the score between us was like 25-23. He was ahead. So it was. I gave him. I'm proud that I gave him everything I had, and that was as good as I can wrestle. And I was way better in 1988 than I was in '84 when I won the gold. And for that 2-month period that I was able to make 136 in 1988, I was at my absolute best.
We are on the mat with Randy Lewis, 1984 Olympic wrestling champion, who is celebrating his 58th birthday on the show today. 2 names that you're familiar with. You watched them. You helped train them. You saw them come up through the ranks. Tom and Terry Brands, when they came into the wrestling room, they weren't world beaters, and they became world champions and Olympic champions. How did they progress at a level to get to that point where they got to say they were the best in the world?
Well, they had tremendous drive and a great work ethic. There's nobody could outwork them. They were so strong. They were always like Tom Brands probably asked me to wrestle 200 times, and I wrestled him 200 times. Now, when I was smaller than Gable, one weight class, and I was a weight class bigger than Tom Brands the whole time. When I was a weight class smaller than Gable, I maybe asked him to wrestle 3 times. I'd wrestle him once, like, okay, I'll get you again in 2 years. Brands would literally, and he was the most perfect guy for me, especially being smaller. And he shot, and he drove real hard and attacked the hip. And he was like Barry Davis and Brad Penner. I had some national champs and world medalists and world champs and attacking me constantly. It was unbelievable. All smaller than me and all just shooting on me, just constantly. And I never, ever wore either of the Brands out, even though I had 15, 20 pounds on them. And it was unbelievable how they just kept attacking. I kept scoring, and if you totaled up the amount of points scored, how much I score on them in a practice, you wouldn't believe it, and I wouldn't believe it even because I never scored it for the whole practice. But it was a lot, but they just kept coming, and not just me. Like Tom and Terry were wrestling against national champions, and that room was so tough at that time. So many great guys, and they just kept getting better and better and better, and it was a pleasure to be a part of their success.
When we look at comparisons, and it's happening right now, it happens all the time. We talk about eras, and people are talking about this year's Golden State Warriors against maybe the 96 Bulls or the 98 Bulls, whatever the team was. In wrestling, it's fun because you actually have a weight class where you can say, this guy wrestled at this weight class against this guy from this era at this weight class. When you look at eras, and you try to make a comparison, and I like the one of a Lee Kemp versus a Jordan Burroughs. Why is it hard to make comparisons in wrestling? Because you do have different sets of rules. You have different weigh-ins. Is it fair to be able to say, Randy Lewis, how would you do against Dean Heil or someone of today's era? Is it fair to make that comparison?
It is fair, but you have to take what rules are you wrestling under? Okay, because everybody looks at the rules today. And it's like I'll take an example. Let's take Jordan Burroughs and Lee Kemp. Now their careers were very, very similar. Lee Kemp, in a 5-year period, was a 3-time world champ and a bronze medalist, and had 4 undefeated seasons. And one of the years that he didn't win was 1980, when he beat the Olympic champion that year and went undefeated that year, but did not get to wrestle. So that's pretty much about exactly what Jordan Burroughs did in 5 years. Jordan Burroughs had, I think, 3 undefeated seasons, undefeated years, a whole calendar year when undefeated. I don't know of any other. John Smith has had 2. I don't know of anybody else that has had 2. Gable only had 1. Bruce Baumgartner had 0. I mean, they both had undefeated seasons, so they were great. Now, you look at the stance of Lee Kemp, and he stood more straight up because you had to. The rules were different then. Like Jordan Burroughs has been. By the way, those guys, they're both athletic as heck, and strong and quick, and could finish shots, and were very hard to score on, could scramble really well. They were just both great wrestlers, and they keep changing the rules in wrestling, so the skill set keeps changing, and you see sometimes if you put Jordan Burroughs, they would. The low stance that he gets right now, they didn't let you do back then in 1979. So if you wrestle Jordan Burroughs now in 1979, he'd get cautioned a lot for stalling every time he got a low stance. They say present. So they keep changing the rules, and the skills change somewhat, but it's still basically wrestling. And Lee Kemp he was very hard to score on back then in 9-minute matches where you had to stay upright, but he would have been just like Jordan Burroughs. And if they wrestled each other 5 times, one of them would win 3 and one of them would win 2, in my opinion. And they're both great wrestlers. But there are some things like, there are some guys like, okay, Chris Campbell versus Mark Schultz. So that's a matchup that never happened. Well, if they wrestle under rules, there was 3 years there where the rules were where you could stall all you want, and they didn't put you down for stalling. And Chris Campbell was probably better on the feet for 1 takedown in winning match 1-0 against Mark Schultz. And even though Mark Schultz would be very hard to score on, but if you put him down for passivity, Mark Schultz probably turn him. And that's what Dave Schultz finally beat Lee Kemp, is when they started putting you down for passivity. And Dave Schultz got real good with a leg lace and was able to turn Lee Kemp. And that's if the rules wouldn't have given him a chance on top, he still never learned to take him down. Like Dave Schultz hardly ever took Lee Kemp down. And Lee Kemp won the first 9 times they wrestled. But then the rules changed, and Dave Schultz made the adjustments. And you see right now, sometimes some guys are a different skill set under a different set of rules. Some guys would win under this. It's just like, and like the weigh-ins. Okay, well, look how much, I look at, say, John Peterson in 1976 at 180 versus Kevin Jackson in 1992, I believe, at 180. Well, if you wrestle under the 76 rules, we're a 3-day weigh-in at 2 hours before in the morning in 9-minute matches, I'd pick John Peterson against Kevin Jackson. But if you go under the 1992 rules, 5 or 6 minute match, and they put you down for stalling, and by then Kevin Jackson had developed a gut wrench, and he was very strong, and he was way bigger than John Peterson because he's weighing in one time the night before, so he's weighing 200 rather than weighing 180. So you look at all these different guys, and you got to say, well, under what weight, under what conditions, and right now you're seeing, okay, a lot of being a world champion is you got to be the right size, especially an Olympic champion when they only have 6 weights. If you're the wrong size, it's really hard. It's hard to not be the right size. It's hard to have to cut 10 more pounds than you should, or to try and gain 10 pounds of muscle and wrestle a guy, like David Taylor. He's kind of caught in between weights, and I don't know if he's big enough yet for 189, but for him to move up from 163 and have to beat Sadulayev, but now I see Sadulayev moved up, so maybe David Taylor's got a chance this year. But I would have a hard time picking David Taylor if he made our team over Sadulayev, because Sadulayev so much, it appears to me he's bigger for the weight. But there's a lot of, when you talk about wrestlers wrestling, from the greats, under what rules and what weigh-ins, and it is fun to talk about, though.
Yeah, it is fun, and I just
even I look at myself. I take Randy Lewis in 1980 when I was a junior in college versus Randy Lewis in 1988 at 136. Who wins? Well, if we wrestle under the 1988 rules, weighing in the night before, Randy Lewis in 1988 wins, and where you put you down for stalling, and I can gut wrench him, because I guarantee you, in 1980 I'd never even done a gut wrench, because back then nobody used the gut wrench, because 90% of the time when you did it, if you didn't go with a very high gut wrench, they'd score it 2-2. So it wasn't even worth the risk, and nobody leg laced till after 1980 because they'd almost always score it 2-2. So you didn't really have leg laces and gut wrenches in 1980. Yet in 1984, I think I was one of the best in the world in the gut wrench, and by 1988, I think I was the best in the world with the gut wrench. I could gut wrench people without locking my hands. I'd go one arm or two, and I say, well, I think I'll just gut wrench you with one. And but if I wrestled 1988 Randy Lewis, cutting from 160 pounds down to 136, weighing in the morning, going a 9-minute match against me as a junior in college, I'll take the 1980 version under the 80 rule.
No,
it's against myself.
The 1980 Randy Lewis probably didn't understand health very well, because you're eating pizzas every night, weren't you?
Well, I ate whatever I wanted to eat. I still did in 1988.
Okay, so you
but I was able to make weight. Okay, and I ate whatever I wanted to.
Do you think it affected you? Do you think it made a difference?
What was the question? What made
no,
a difference?
I'm just asking, do you think if you would have had a better health regimen, do you think it would have made a difference, or was that your edge? Did you want that? Did you need that?
I didn't think it. I ate what I wanted to eat. Like if I felt like eating a candy bar, I'd eat a candy bar. I know later when I had to cut more weight, I had to drink more water and cut out. Like I used to drink Mountain Dew back in 1980, but I didn't drink that in 88. But I could sweat way better. I cut weight way better. Now I had a big gas tank. It didn't matter what I ate. Okay, I'm going to outwear everybody. I'm going to go, and it's just like it's all mental. If you think, by the way, I never thought I was eating bad food. I never thought that in 88. I never thought that in 80. I said, go ahead, you can eat whatever you want. I'll eat what I want, and I'm still going to kick your ass. And nobody ever worked me down. Nobody ever outworked me because I ate McDonald's or Wendy's or by the way, I don't know what a good diet is. I don't know what you're supposed to eat. I ate what I was hungry for. If I wanted a steak, I ate a steak. If I wanted spaghetti, I ate spaghetti.
Well, you were hungry for winning, weren't you?
Yeah. But I don't know what what kind of diet was I supposed to be on?
Yeah, well, I think it was Terry Brands that said he shook his head and didn't know how you did it, and I think that's kind of the point, is you defied the odds and did it your way and was successful with your approach, and that's why we're still talking about you. So, hey, we have to take our final break. We're going to have more with Olympic wrestling champion Randy Lewis on the mat on his birthday, 50th birthday next. Randy Lewis.
Log on and listen online at 1650thefan.com, the online home of 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Doug Van Gelder. Our final segment with the birthday boy, Randy Lewis, 1984 Olympic wrestling champion, Iowa wrestling legend, one of the all-time greats in the sport. And we get a chance to talk more about international wrestling and who could beat who. And we just had a good conversation about historical comparisons and when we look to the future and what athletes do today. We've talked about this, Randy. There's some skills that are missing. You don't necessarily see some of the throws and the execution. Why do you think that some wrestlers have gotten limited in their scope of their ability to execute a wide variety of moves?
Well, I think what happened, we went 8 years of what I call the dark ages in wrestling, of international. And I'm not talking about college, but I'm talking about international, where they do those two. We went like 8 years with 3 2-minute periods, and each period was its own match. And basically, nobody did anything. All it was stall and push and wait. And hope to win the coin toss for the clinch, and there was such a severe penalty for giving up one takedown that everybody just got really strong and athletic, and was just maintaining position became the thing. And now, boy, they're really making you wrestle, and you're seeing all sorts of skills. And by the way, these guys nowadays are very athletic. They're way more flexible and stronger than we were back in the day, and I think. But our guys, I think, wrestle at a higher pace. That right now, guys like hit boom and explosive scramble. Whereas we had 9-minute matches. Weighed in. You had to do. I think there's a lot more running. There's a lot more flexibility, strength, and very athletic skills. And they're really, really good in some positions. But there's just some positions that you don't get into near as much because of the way the rules are. And one of those is in the U.S. especially. Is upper body, but and I think we've gone away. We haven't had very many Americans that are very good upper body in the last 15, 20 years. But there's still been some foreigners that are real good there, and there are still some. I'm seeing some guys that I'm seeing Bo Nickel and some other guys. Mark Hall's got some stuff. I've seen some great skills, and I'm real excited about. If I'm very disappointed that freestyle put in that 2-point caution and trying to give the ref too much ability to determine who wins the match and 2 points for a correct throw when it's thrown to I saw some guys throw to their back. That's not a correct throw. That's a totally incorrect throw, and they gave them 2 points. They should have had 3 or 4 points against them, and they're getting 2. It's 6-point swing. So. I think you're going to see, and I like the 4-point move of taking guys to their back. We're starting to see some stuff, and there are some areas. The area where, like in the 80s, when they first started putting you down for stalling, the guys that won and got tech falls, Zayev, myself, some other guys. Got really good on top, so you could turn everybody. And the guys, and right now, some guys are coming out, and the guys in high school and junior worlds and at the senior level also are coming out. And the guys that are winning the freestyle are the ones that are coming and getting that takedown, getting that leg lace locked up, and boom, boom, getting that gut wrench locked up, boom, boom, scoring like that. And that's what happened in the 80s. In the 80s, the offensive guys were ahead, and then I cannot believe how good guys got. By 1996, guys became so good defensing parterre. But it took 10 years. It took 10 years for guys to learn how to stop the gut wrench and cross legs and leg laces and stuff. And right now, so we went through an 8-year period where nobody was gut wrenching anybody, and nobody was doing parterre because the rules were so bad. They never put you down for stalling, and they'd only give you like 5 to 10 seconds at max on top. So nobody practiced it. It was all push outs and waiting for. I mean, they really spent 8 years with incredibly stupid. They picked the worst rules ever and stuck with them for 8 years. And now you're seeing guys scoring, and guys are getting, boy, they're good. I mean, they're Dave Schultz was really good with that leg lace. I've seen dozens of guys as good or better than him right now. I mean, we got Americans, we got high school kids coming out and just hitting perfect leg laces, going right into it, and hitting great gut wrenches and to both sides. And so right now, the guys that are winning are the guys that are going to be able to turn guys most of the time.
All right, you mentioned one of the great ones that's coming up that's going to be an Iowa Hawkeye, Spencer Lee. What do you see out of him as an Iowa wrestler? You see big things out of him?
Yes, and I don't know if I should predict this or not, but I don't know if he's going to redshirt. I think because of his injury, I'm heard he's going to get back on the mat in October, maybe earlier, maybe later. But this is what I see him doing this first year. I think he'll probably redshirt, and with the new rules, the new weigh-ins, I believe, the new rules next year in freestyle, I think the lightest weight is going to be 121, which is, what's that? Is that 55 kilos? Is that 121?
Yeah, 58, maybe 57, something like that.
55
kilos. Yep.
That's 121. I think
Correct.
That's going to be the lightest weight. It's 57 now, right?
Correct.
57 kilos, 120. Okay. Yeah, so and they're going to 55 kilos with a 2-hour weigh-in. Well, I don't think hardly any of the Americans that are wrestling at 57 kilos right now are going to be able to go that weight. I think Spencer Lee will probably be our guy to make the world team his freshman year here. I think he'll redshirt and win, and I think he'll make the world team, and I'm picking him to win the world.
Wow.
At 120.
Wow. Picking Spencer Lee as a freshman to win the world, huh?
Well, I think he will. I think at that weight, and he may end up with the same guy in the finals that he had a hell of a match with, that tall guy from wherever he's from that threw him. That was a hell of a match when he won the Junior Worlds and came back. Those two guys could meet in the finals at 121. I don't know. I don't know if Dayton 6 is going to be able to make that weight. I know Spencer Lee definitely will. I'm looking at, like, I don't see Ramos or any of those guys making 121.
Yeah, it's a big cut. That's a big cut.
Yeah, making it and making 121 with a 2-hour weigh-in. Besides, I don't think a lot of those guys could make it even with the day before weigh-in. But yeah. They can't do it. I think that'll be a perfect weight for Spencer Lee. He's already a 3-time world champion. He's won the cadets once and the junior worlds twice. I think most of the guys he'll have in the worlds will be young guys like him. They'll be 20 years old. There's not many old time. I don't know what the rest of the world has for older guys, experienced guys that are used to wrestling at 57 kilos the day before. They've bulked themselves up where they're weighing 140 and cutting down to 125 or more, and where they're used to weighing in at 2:30 in the afternoon and then getting up to 140 by the next day when they wrestle. That's a whole different group of guys that he's going to be wrestling. I don't think. I think Spencer Lee is going to win the world this next year.
All right, we are.
121.
We're talking with Randy Lewis on his 58th birthday. Lewis, of course, 1984 Olympic wrestling champion and an all-time great at the University of Iowa, 2-time NCAA wrestling champion, made the finals 3 times. And I want to get you on record saying this, Randy. It's your 58th birthday. Will you finally admit you are the greatest Iowa wrestler who ever lived?
Oh, I admitted that a long time ago.
Okay, well, all right. At least we got you on record. At least we got you on record with that, because maybe you admitted it to yourself and some others, but
several people have heard me say it several times.
Okay, all right. So we got you on the airwaves saying it. So congratulations to yourself there for that high achievement. So
now, for being recognized.
Yeah, for being recognized. Yeah. So
okay.
Now, hey, just as we wind this down and talk about all-time greatness, who you picking all-time in the United States? If you had one guy that you said, hey, this is the quintessential guy, this is the guy that I want to represent the United States, that I'm saying this is the best, who are you picking number one?
Well, right now I go with John Smith, 6-time World Olympic champion.
Okay.
Until you beat 6 in a row. 6 in a row.
So he's your number one.
That's hard to beat.
Yep. And that includes everything? That's just international, or does that include some college? How are you judging that?
That includes, he's our best international. Cale's our best college wrestler, 159-0, four titles. Combination of both. John Smith did go. He won 2 NCAA titles, was 3-time finalist. Jordan Burroughs, let's see what's he got. He's got to be number 2. Jordan Burroughs, Lee Kemp, number 2, tied probably.
Okay. All right. So you got Gable's in the mix.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got Mark Schultz, 3-time NCAA champ, 3-time World Olympic champ. You go mostly Bruce Baumgartner.
Yeah, you got some good ones in there. So we've.
I forgot about Bruce.
Yeah.
You know what? But he is a heavyweight. I have a hard time ranking heavyweights in there. But yes, he's our greatest heavyweight. He's by far our greatest heavyweight. But
right. You got a lot of great ones there. But hey,
I'm laughing at Bruce because I just looked. They just had something great wrestlers that got pinned in the NCAA finals, and Bruce was he did pretty good, and he got pinned, but he did get pinned twice in the NCAA finals.
He did.
And I remember one time, I made sure I was near the exit and I could sprint. I see Bruce and a bunch of wrestlers, and I stood by the door ready to sprint away. I go, hey guys, got a trivia question. What 13-time world medalist and 5-time World Olympic champion and 4-time Olympic medalist and 2-time Olympic champion and NCAA champion got pinned twice in the NCAA finals? Boom, and I sprinted out of the room.
Good move. Good move. Well, hey.
Yeah, there's, right now, until somebody wins more than 6, you got to go with John Smith.
All right, John Smith's number 1 in Randy Lewis's book. Hey, happy birthday. It's your 58th birthday. Great to have you on for a full hour here, and hopefully we will see you at the World Team Trials.
Well, no, I will not be at the World Team Trials.
Okay.
I'm going to my 40-year high school reunion.
Okay. Well, have a good time with that. Happy birthday today.
And John Smith also gets ranked number 1 because he beat Randy Lewis.
Okay, well, that's all right. As it should be. As it should be.
But I did beat him once, so I can say I beat the greatest of them all. So.
All right. Well, hey, you put it on the line every time, and that's why we still enjoy talking to you and why we enjoy your opinion, and appreciate you coming on the show, Randy.
All right, thank you, Carl.
All right, that was a lot of fun.
Happy birthday to you.
Have Randy Lewis on the show. Hey, we got to make sure we mention this. You and I is going to the. Is he going to still
talk about? Did you mention the Hall of Famers?
The Hall of Famers.
The guys that just made the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we had Chuck Yeagle on. We've had Andre Metzger. We've talked about those guys. So yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what? I wish I would have talked about Andre a little bit more.
Yeah.
About my match with him, but because I had a couple good ones there, but that's all right.
All right. Well, hey, it's been a fun show. Just wanted to make sure we mentioned that the University of Northern Iowa is going to the Big 12 Conference. So for those who follow wrestling locally, that's big news. I think it's going to be fun to be able to have Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, potentially West Virginia. Iowa State's going to be in that conference, so that certainly moves the needle for the University of Northern Iowa, and I think wrestling fans will embrace that. And I know that I'm excited about that and having that opportunity. And I love having Oklahoma State come to the West Gym because I know that John Smith doesn't necessarily like wrestling in the West Gym. It's a hot, hostile place, so it's going to be fun to have that opportunity. Hey, it's been a great show. We've had a lot of fun with Randy Lewis on his 58th birthday. He's an all-time great in our sport. We got a chance to pick his brain about a variety of topics, and as always, it's fun to have Doug Van Gelder in the captain's chair leading the ship. For Scott Fensloff and Doug Van Gelder, I'm Kyle Klingman. You've been listening to On the Mat.
You've been listening to On the Mat, the Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.